In our previous video, we have discussed about circuit-switched networks. We know that it has some disadvantages, like if all the links are busy, we cannot make a call. To overcome those disadvantages, a new switching technique was introduced. It is called message switching. In message switching, all the switching stations are given a sufficient storage. We can call them buffers. During the transmission, every switch in between the source and destination stores the entire message, and forwards that from node to node. This phenomenon is called store and forward. If the message is very big, it takes so much time to transmit. So, this message takes all the resources for a long time, which causes the next message to wait for a very long time. Well, message switching also has some disadvantages, like the nodes need sufficient storage, more processing time for the entire message, and we cannot use this technique for real-time transmission like live streaming, multimedia games, because of long delays. To overcome those disadvantages, packet switching technique was introduced. Packet-switched networks. In packet switching, the data is packetized, that is, large message is divided into small units, for better results, whereas in circuit switching, data is a continuous flow. Packet-switched networks can be classified into two types: datagram networks and virtual circuit networks. Let us look into each of them in detail. Datagram networks. Networks that provide connection-less services at the network level are called datagram networks. In other words, no connection setup required before data transfer, and data packets can take different routes. In datagram networks, there is no need of setup or disconnection phases, because each packet is treated independently, and they don't need to travel in the same path. Hence, these packets may arrive at the destination, out of order. In datagram networks, resource allocation happens only when there are packets to be transmitted, whereas in circuit-switched networks, resources are allocated for entire duration. Here the packets are called datagrams. And the switch in a datagram network can be called as a router. Every packet in a datagram network carries a header that contains the destination address of the packet. The router uses the destination address to transmit packets from source to destination. The destination address of the packet is same for the entire duration. We have discussed that the datagram networks are connection-less networks, and transmits packets individually. Now let us discuss about the efficiency and delay. The efficiency of the datagram network is better than that of circuit-switched network, because here, no resource allocation required for the entire duration, and no restriction on the number of participants. But there is a chance of delay here, because the datagrams may experience a wait time at the router, when there are so many datagrams in a network. The Internet we use today is an example of datagram network. We have seen the data transmission in datagram networks. Now let us see how data transfer happens in virtual circuit networks. Virtual circuit networks. Virtual circuit networks use connection-oriented switching like circuit-switched networks, that is, resources must be allocated before data transfer. We already know, circuit switching happens at physical layer, and switching in datagram networks happen at network layer. But in virtual circuit networks, switching happens at the data link layer. Transporting data over a connection-oriented packet-switched network, that is, the data transported from a particular source to a destination, follows the same path and through the same nodes is called virtual circuit switching, and the path, that is, series of links and routers, is called virtual circuit. Just like circuit-switched networks, virtual circuit networks also have setup, data transfer and teardown phases. At the beginning of a transmission, a setup packet goes from source to destination establishing a path, and reserves resources. This is called setup phase. In the data transfer phase, the data packets follow the path that is established in the setup phase. The same resources are allocated on demand, and on a first-come first-served basis. For example, Alice and Bob are communicating via a switched network, and if 4 packets are transmitted from Alice to Bob, and after that, they paused for a while, that means no packets are being transmitted. Now, if some other communicates in the network, the same path can be used to transmit their packets, even the connection for the Alice and Bob is not terminated. In case of circuit-switched networks, it is not possible to use the same path, unless the connection is terminated. As all the packets belonging to a particular source travel along the same path, they arrive at the destination in order. But they may experience some delay because of the congestion. Just like a datagram network, data is packetized, and each packet carries an address in the header. In virtual circuits, 2 types of addressing is required. Global addressing, and local addressing. A source or a destination must have a global address, unique in the scope of network, if the network is part of international network. As the first packet decides the path, it contains the global address in the header, but not subsequent packets. All the other packets have the local address in the header. Local address is also called as Virtual Circuit Identifier, or VCI. Local address has local jurisdiction, it defines what should be the next router, and the channel on which the packet is being carried. A VCI, unlike a global address, is a small number that has only switch scope, that means, each link on the network contains different VCIs. It is used by a frame between two switches. When a frame arrives at a switch, it has a VCI, when it leaves, it has a different VCI. So, in short, a virtual circuit consists a path between the source and destination hosts, and contains VC numbers, one number for each link along the path, and each router contains entries in the forwarding table along the path. A packet belonging to a particular virtual circuit carries a VC number in its header. We know that each link has different VC numbers, so every router along the path must replace the old VC number with a new one. The new VC number is obtained from the forwarding table. We will see an example to better understand the concept. Let us take two end systems A and B, and four routers, R1, R2, R3 and R4. The end system A is connected to R1, and the other end system B is connected to R4. Let us assume the system A wants to communicate with B. So, A sends a request message to B, and establishes a virtual circuit through the routers, R1, R3 and R4. So the path is A, R1, R3, R4, B, assigns 16, 22, 30, 36 as VC numbers to the four links in the virtual circuit. In this case, when a frame leaves host A, the value in the VC number field in the frame header is 16. When it leaves R1, it is 22, and when it leaves R3, the value is 30, and finally when it leaves R4, the value is 36. The forwarding table in the router contains the next link VC numbers along the path. Virtual circuit networks are more efficient than datagram networks, as it reserves a path for the entire duration. The delay is also minimum compared to datagram networks. There is no need to provide complete addressing information in the header for each packet, since the packets are not routed individually. Only a small number, VCI, is required in each packet. That means, each packet contains a less overhead, compared to datagram networks. Let's recap and see what we have learned in this video. In packet switching, data is packetized to have the flexibility and efficiency. Datagram networks are connectionless, and virtual circuits are connection-oriented networks. Virtual circuits are